Start.
Hello everyone. This is an analysis of SNAP 2019 which was taken up today from 2 to 4. Let us first start with an understanding of the paper pattern because it was slightly different this year. So there were 3 sections instead of 4. The GK section or the current affairs section was not there. The first section was the general English section which had 34 questions of 1.5 marks each. Then we had the reasoning section, which had 36 questions of 1.5 marks each. And then we had the quant section, which had 2 types of questions: normal questions, which were MCQs with 1 mark per correct question, and special questions, which were type in, which were 2 marks per question. So it was a total of 110 questions and 150 marks with 2 hours time. Let us now understand a detailed analysis of the quant sections. So if you could help us.
Okay. Quant section, unlike last year, it was moderate level difficulty. It was not very easy. Uh, let's come to the first 2 marker questions. 2 marker questions were a speed breaker because they were calculation oriented, and there were questions where you have to multiply 5-digit number into a 5-digit number. So it was lengthy. Those students know how to solve the question, but maybe it was not worth time spending for 2 marks. There was one question in 2 marker which was very easy, that was based on time and work, could have been solved in less than a minute probably. Now coming to the normal question, which were MCQ questions, so there were 35 MCQ questions, out of which around 24 to 26, 27 questions which were easy, doable one. To name few of them, there were 5 geometry questions which were easy or easy to moderate, could have been solved. Then there were questions based on permutation combinations, probability. There were 5 questions. Again, those were easy to moderate level. Then there were 5 questions based on time speed distance. Again, those questions were easy to moderate, should have been solved. Then there were 2 questions on time and work, which was again very easy. There was hitters. Then this time there was 6 questions on set theory, of which the one set theory was involving the 4 different parameters and not the 3 parameters. So that was little lengthy, but if student could have attempted, there was a trick in the last 2 statement where most of the things were getting 0, and hence that set could have been solved in probably 4 or 5 minutes. And since there were 4 questions, it was, I mean, maybe a student could have taken a risk and at least read the set and could have got all the 4 marks easily. Then there was second set on set theory, which had 2 questions. That was a little tricky considering the snap paper pattern. The question were based on the minimum and the maximum kind of thing, and a similar set, a student, an endeavor student, would have solved it very easily because a similar kind of set student have practiced in our study material. So endeavor student shouldn't find this set a difficult one. Then there were few questions on logarithm. Then there was one question on simple interest compound. Then there was a question on surds. Then there was percentages. So this was the basic 35 questions of quantitative ability. In this, there was 6 questions on data interpretation, one which was on table, and the another which was on pie chart. The one on table had the rice production and percentage change from the previous year. All the 3 questions were very easy, and with the help of approximation, if students are good with the reciprocals, all the 3 questions could have been solved in 3 to 4 minutes, should not have taken much time. The second data interpretation, which was on pie chart, it was easy, but it was little calculative as compared to the first tabular data interpretation, and it would have probably taken around 5 odd minutes, 5 to 6 minutes to solve those 3 questions. Otherwise, if I have to look at the entire quant section, I think this section deserve giving a 15 minutes time, and in this 15 minute, a good attempt would have been anything which is around 30. A good score would have been somewhere between 24 to 26 marks. Now let's look at the general English section. So
Right. So since the marking scheme had changed and verbal now had 1.5 marks per question, there were some expectations about the difficulty level getting higher. However, the difficulty level was along the lines of last year and the year before that. So it was pretty easy. There were, just like every year, even this year, vocabulary was the biggest chunk, which was 12 questions of vocabulary. And there were 11 questions of grammar. So these were the two major chunks. Then there were 8 questions of reading comprehension, and 2 questions on figures of speech, and one parajumble with 7 sentences, which was quite difficult. Let's talk about vocabulary first. So it was a mix of different question types. We had synonyms, antonyms. We had spelling based questions. We had word usage based questions as well. And we also had an odd one out question where there were 3 words which were synonyms, and there was one word which was an antonym of all those 3 words. Right. So these were now, thankfully, all the words that we saw today in vocabulary were right out of Endeavor's study material. So any Endeavor student who's well prepared would have been able to answer all of these questions with great ease. Now, grammar questions were mainly focused on verbs, modal verbs, and tenses, and voices, and conditionals. There was one question on conjunctions as well, and parts of speech, 2 questions on parts of speech, with one of them being a match the following question, which we saw last year as well. Now, we can say that these questions were also fairly easy and not time consuming at all, because they were very short sentences, and there was a mix of fill in the blanks, one match the following, there was one 2 sentence correction questions as well. The active passive voice questions were also fairly easy. Now, coming to the parajumble, that was a 7 sentence parajumble, which would have been a little daunting, but the options were very easy. So, a student could have done some smart work here and arrived at the correct answer. Now, there were 2 figure of speech questions, like I said. One of them was a hyperbole, and one of them was an alliteration, which are both fairly common figures of speech, so not that difficult. The tricky part in verbal section this time was the RCs. There was one RC of 3 questions, which was about 700 to 800 words, and it was an extract from Dalai Lama's book, which is The Art of Happiness. The whole passage was talking about how pleasure is the major drive of any human being, and the passage was fairly easy. It was analytical, but the questions were slightly inference based. So I can't say that the test taker could go from the question to the passage and immediately get the answer directly. It required a little bit of reading between the lines as well. So this passage would have taken about 10 minutes to read and answer the 3 questions. The second passage was very lengthy. It was an article from The Economist about China getting into the telecom sector. Now, this passage was mainly descriptive with a lot of data. So, obviously, because there were 5 questions here, the test taker shouldn't have read the whole passage and then gone to the questions. It would have been very time consuming, because the passage was over 1,000 words, could easily be about 1,200 words as well. So the right approach would have been to take up as many direct questions as you find. Look at question one, find the answer, and it would be wise for a student not to waste a lot of time here. This is where the trap falls. If you entered this passage with the hope of getting all 5 questions out of it, you would have easily wasted about 12 to 15 minutes on this. So you could have skipped this passage. I think overall allocating around a 25 minutes to this section would have been good, with a 29 attempts, because vocab and grammar questions were very quick, very easy. So 25 minutes, 29 attempts with good accuracy. The good score would be somewhere close to a 34 or 36. This was pretty much doable. Let's look at the reasoning section now. So,
Okay. Uh, so, like every year, even this year there were 3 special kind of question in reasoning, of which 2 were based on visual reasoning. So one was figure completion, and the second was 3D image. So the image was given, the open image, and then you have to form a cube out of it. There was another special question which was, I mean, you cannot term under any of the category. The question based on the walls of the house, all the walls should face the north. So which of the options should be, So it was something, a tricky one, I would say. It was not very, I mean, a student would have probably left it because it was a very different new type of question. Uh, like last year as well, this year again, there were three questions which were, I would not say it was really a reasoning, but they involved a little bit of maths. So one question was based on progression, the another was based on time and work, and the third was based on percentages. So a student should have a basic knowledge about this three topics to attempt the question. Then the remaining question, of which there were nine questions on matrix arrangement, or you can say a puzzle. Out of this nine question, there was one set of three questions which was based on the movies and the days on in which the movies are played, and it was very pretty straightforward. And the remaining six question was on one single set. Uh, like last year, there was seven question on one set, but that set was very lengthy and tricky. This time, the set was very easy, could have been cracked in 4 to 5 minutes, and 6 marks would have been like this. I mean, not 6 marks, 9 marks, because it was 1.5 marks. So this set involved there was six spices which have to be arranged from left to right, and they were some filled in some different colored jars. So it was not a difficult one. So this ninth question was very straightforward, and students should have definitely attempted. Now, the remaining question were very standard question. There were four questions on coding and decoding. Then there were two questions on clock, one on calendar. Then there was one question on series, which was a little difficult to crack. It was not a very easy series. Then there were one question based on greed completion, and then there was some miscellaneous type of logic. Then there were four questions on blood relation, out of which one question was based on the symbol based blood relation. It was not the traditional way. And there was one question based on truth teller and the liar and the alternator, which was little tricky. It was a little lengthy, I would say, but then could have been solved. If student knows how to attempt to solve this set, I think the student could have easily cracked it. There were two more questions, I guess. There were two more questions on analogy. It was not purely a verbal base or a reasoning base. There was, I mean, analogy should require a general knowledge, a little bit knowledge about GK as well.
Yes.
And there was one question of course of action, which was relatively easy, was not difficult. More or less, reasoning section would be termed as easy to moderate. Uh, an ideal time to devote to this section was around 45 odd minute, and in 45 odd minute one could have attempted around 27, 28 odd question, and anything in the range of 32 to 34 marks would be considered as a good attempt. uh, let's move on to the overall analysis. So
Right. So, based on the sectional analysis and the overall feel of the paper, I we believe that the overall cutoff of this, because this year the paper has been overall easy to moderate, with the verbal section being fairly easy, reasoning being easy to moderate, and quant being moderate. I would say that the overall feel of the test was easy to moderate. So the expected cutoff is a little bit higher. So we believe that for an SIBM Pune or an SEM HRD, the overall cutoff should go to about 88, around an 88. And the next tier colleges, which is SIBM Bangalore and SIIB, should be a little lower or at about 75 marks. That is the expectation. Right.
and for the in detail analysis, you can go through the analysis on our Endeavor page, the link for which we have already is there in the comment box.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.